If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. For more videos like this, people who have encountered ghosts, supernatural beings, etc. What was your experience? Woke up to get a glass of water at night, passed my dad on the way to the kitchen. I asked him something about where was he going. He walked right past me, like he didn't see or even hear me, just was in a type of trance, and he walked out the front door. I looked out the front window, and he was sitting on our sidewalk under a tree, hands on his knees staring into the dark. I went to my mom's room to ask her what dad was doing. She said, "What do you mean? He's right here?" She scooted over, as there was my dad, laying in bed asleep. I was home alone when I was about 21. My parents' house has always been creepy, even my friends have noticed paranormal things happening in the home, i.e. socks moving, doors randomly closing and lights turning on and off. So I go to sleep, I am awoken by TV which is suddenly on full volume and has an image frozen on it. It almost looked like the screen painting by Munch. The sound it was making I can only describe as a high-pitched robotic scream. Strange thing is the remote control and power buttons didn't work for turning it off. I had to unplug it from the wall. So I unplug and get back into bed. After about 15 minutes my heart rate is back to normal and I am calm. That's when I heard the footsteps in the hallway. My parents' house is wooden floors. I heard 6 distinct steps coming from the hallway. I could tell the exact location by sound and it sounded like whatever it was had boots on. I pick up a bedside knife and sit on bed, in pitch black, just listening. I sat there for about 30 minutes without hearing another sound. I then get comfortable again. After about another 20 minutes I hear the steps again, from the same area of the hallway. This time I sit on the edge of my bed for about an hour, complete darkness and quiet, just listening. Still nothing. I laid in bed until I had to get ready for work at 6 a.m. just staring at the ceiling listening. Once the sun came up I went out to explore the house. All doors and windows were closed and locked. I searched every room and closet, etc., nothing. Still to this day, creepiest thing I have ever experienced. Firstly, I'm a Mexican American. In our culture, witches, demons, and ghosts are real. At the top of most of our doors, above the door jamb in the center of the doorway, we hung crosses. When I was 17, my mom and stepdad left me home alone to go out on a date. Totally normal. I have a cell, but it's before 9 so I can't call anyone until I have free minutes. I'm on the computer when I get this horrible feeling. It's eerie and black. I just feel off. I start to look around my pink room and just feel dread. It was suffocating. Then, the door to room starts to rattle. Someone is trying to get into my room. The handle is shaking and someone is pounding on the door. I dial my mom, who freaks out and has my stepdad call the police. She keeps telling me to get out of the house. The door stops moving and I just stand there staring confused. Is the person going around the house through a window? I'm breathing hard and shaking. I can hear rustling and movement on the other side of the door. It sounds like heavy footsteps. The light under the door is being blocked and unblocked by a shadow pacing. I can't control my breathing. I take a step toward the bed away from the door, and it starts up again. The force is so hard that the cross up above the door falls and parts of Jesus fly across the room. I drop the phone, but go straight to the window. I open the window and fall out of the house. Everything is quiet. Dead silent. No breeze. No cars. I can see the door shaking, but I can't hear anything. With eyes on the door, I start to crab walk backwards. My tia, who lived next door, comes running from her house with a tire iron. She said she heard me screaming, but looked for a weapon first and called the police. My cousins come piling out and I'm just shaking on the ground by her feet. I only looked away toward my tia for maybe 2 seconds. When I look back in through the open window, the door is ajar. The police arrive before my mom, but find all the doors and windows except for the one I used locked and unopened. They even checked the attic. No one exited the open window as we were all 20 feet away and would have noticed. All I do know is I didn't knock off the cross from my wall, but that was the only evidence of the event. A shattered crucifix and a scared teen. This past summer, my girlfriend took me to the summer camp she usually works at. It was completely empty, no rangers or guests at this Northeast Georgia camp. So we traversed the trails and she revealed the little secret paths in history that one wouldn't get to appreciate on a normal visit. History such as the visit of John Bartram and the Cherokee people who once lived here. When we were finally ready to leave, we talked a little more on the way back to the parking lot. Now, this camp has an amphitheater. Little walls extended beyond the bottom rows to sandwich visitors between it and the lake the amphitheater faces, guiding them towards the seats or away from them. And behind that wall I saw a tall black figure, with lanky limbs and no face. No face but a head with 3 protrusions that extended upward and bent down as if weighing themselves down. It was walking, a slow ponderous walk, its hands swinging past its knees. And, as if noticing my gaze, bent down and curled into a ball behind the wall, disappearing. I didn't freak, but started questioning my girlfriend insistently. "Did you see that? What was it? Is anyone here?" She managed to extract from me what I saw, of that being. And then, she told me to run. The campers who work there insist that the camp is haunted. None dare to walk alone between the buildings at night. After driving out of the camp, my girlfriend and I discussed everything I saw, some of the paranormal things that seemed to happen, the things others have seen. A house a group saw on Google Maps in the forest, only to find no trace in the same clearing. A large white possum, human-sized to be exact, captured on a hunting camera, and seen by a counselor and some Boy Scouts she was hiking with. These walkers tend to be one of those happenings. The last part is what cinches this for me. My girlfriend didn't tell anyone of what I saw. I felt a little crazy myself. Obviously a mistake on my part. Until my girlfriend and I talked one night. She told me this. A group of counselors, her included, hung out in teaching center late at night. The plan to sleep there, get away from some of the assholes that they had to share rooms with. After talking late into the night, everyone fell asleep in their bags. One counselor woke up again, having trouble sleeping. He looked out into the forest surrounding the teaching center. He saw them. It wasn't just one walker. 3 walkers tread a path around the center. They walked a circle around the gathered. Then, they walked away. That counselor didn't find sleep for a long while. He didn't even tell others of the events of that night until a week later. Then my girlfriend told of what I saw. The counselors there are adamant. That camp is haunted. When my so and I were just dating, we lived in an upstairs, 2-bedroom apartment that had an open floor plan. This meant that you could stand at the bathroom door and look into both the kitchen and the living room on the left and the bedroom directly in front. One night very early in the morning, I woke up to go to the bathroom, and as I walked through the door I saw a black shadow standing in the light of the street lamp outside of the living room window. I sort of froze and looked at it. The figure was completely black, with no arms at all but long, thin legs with knobby knees that were a little bent down as if the creature were squatting. The body moved up into the head without a break-in form for a neck. Imagine an inflatable punching bag, you know the ones that cannot get knocked down, and then make it about 7 feet tall on skinny legs and all slouched over. It didn't have a face, just was a big black form, and I saw all of this over about 30 seconds of just standing there. Neither the creature nor I moved during that time, and I threw myself into the bathroom once I could move. By the time I was done with my business, I convinced myself I imagined it or had a waking nightmare. When I left the bathroom it was gone, and I slept no more until the morning. I don't remember if it had a shadow, indicating mass, or not. I've spent a ton of time outside hunting with my dad and Gramps. When I was around 9 or 10 and was consistently going hunting with them, he sat me down one day and told me that no matter what I did, never under any circumstance come to a voice calling me, even if it sounded like his. He told me he would always keep me in sight. Fast forward about 4 years and we were hunting and I had gained a lot of experience. It was about 5 a.m. and still pitch black. My dad told me to get set up at our spot and that he was running back to the truck to get an extra camo sleeping bag. We used them to cover up behind our hunting blinds. About 2 minutes after he had left I hear him calling my name. I quietly stood up and tried to listen which direction it was coming from. I heard it again and it was coming from a different direction than the truck. I thought maybe he saw some tracks and wanted to set up in another spot. I was creeping towards his direction as he kept calling my name. I was about a quarter mile into the direction when I thought I saw him down a small hill. I threw my hands up in a kind of "what the duck are you doing down there?" motion when I heard my dad whistle for me. My hair stood up and I got a lump in my throat because the whistle came from our original spot. My dad whistled again and I knew it was him. It was a whistle we always used to identify each other and call our dogs. The figure I saw earlier was still standing there at the bottom of the hill, so I easily started to back up while I whistled back to my dad. The whole time I was backing up, whatever was down there just stared at me. As soon as I could no longer see it I sprinted towards our spot and told Dad what happened, expecting him to bitch me out for coming to the voice. He apologized and said he was sorry for leaving me alone. Now if you don't believe this, shit I don't blame you. Nothing like this ever happened again and I half believe it myself, but one thing I do know is something called me and when I went to it, my dad whistled for me in the complete opposite direction. I was 4. My parents built the house we were living in, way out in the country. I was actually born in the house right after it was built. This is one of my earliest clear memories, probably due to the sheer terror of the experience. I was playing downstairs on a weekend day, just doing 4-year-old stuff. I decided to get a toy from my room. My room was small, and the closet door opened perpendicular to the bedroom door, so when both were open, there was a small space kind of blocked in behind both, but it was still visible through the small space between the doors. As I came into my room, I caught a glimpse of motion out of the corner of my eye in that space. I turned and saw a green demonic-looking figure crouched over behind the doors. It stared right at me and kind of turned its head. I lost my freaking mind. Screamed bloody murder and ran terrified downstairs to my mom, who was in the kitchen. Mom says today that it took about 20 minutes for me to calm down completely. She was a teacher, so was very pragmatic in showing me creative ways to deal with emotion. She had me sit at the table and draw what I saw. With my limited art skills, I drew the greenish-gray creature with a demonic face and red eyes. When I was done, Mom saw the picture, and picked it up. Said something like, "See, nothing in nature looks like that, so it had to be your imagination." Even at 4 though, I could tell Mom was disturbed by it. When I was about 16, I was talking with my mom about what I saw. She got really quiet. The whole family had weird experiences in the house while we lived there, but I could tell there was more to this story. I pressed the issue, and she told me a few months after I was born, my sister, also 4 at the time, saw the same green creature in the same place. She had even drawn a picture that very closely resembled what I had. Mom is a pack rat, so still had both pictures. She found my sisters a few weeks later while cleaning out some old boxes and showed me both together. No idea if it was a demon, spirit, or just my imagination. But seeing my sister's picture of a very similar creature freaked me the hell out. Was driving home on a mountain road at night when from my right, a person entered the headlight beam and continued onto the road straight in front of me. I distinctively remember yelling out "duck" and stomping the brakes because I thought I was about to hit someone with my car. You know that deep gut-wrenching feeling when you receive horrible news? It's the closest feeling I can describe as to how I felt when I noticed that this person was wearing what I only can describe as a cloak with the hood up, and it was floating. I blinked my eyes several times and this thing was floating, completely unaffected by my presence or the fact that I almost hit it. It continued across the road and disappeared into the darkness beyond the reach of my headlights. We went on an excursion to an extremely old prison here in Western Australia. Its name is Fremantle Prison. For those who know about, I don't need to say much more. For those who don't, it's very old and stupidly ducking haunted. There were heaps of executions, deaths, and murders. In the excursion we were taken around the main cell blocks, even to Hanging Square. Throughout the whole tour I kept seeing people in prison garbs out the corner of my eye. One kept hanging around though, there, but as soon as I'd try and make eye contact he'd vanish. They then had us go and sit inside the cells. This particular cell happened to be of a murderer who liked to strangle his victims. So being the young kid I was, I happily went into the concrete cell and sat on the bed. I then saw the same guy I'd been seeing all morning standing in the door smiling. I blinked and he was gone. Then I started having serious trouble breathing to the point I had a coughing fit. The teacher grabbed me and took me outside, and it got easier to breathe almost instantly. I didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to the next day and my mum flipped her shit asking who'd touched me. I had no idea what she was on about. She took me to the bathroom and had me in front of the mirror, and there on my neck were thick dark bruises around my throat. Turns out the tightness of breath was the psychotic ghost's attempts to kill me in his cell. I've never been back to the jail. The masochist inside me really wants to go back there and see if it happens again, though I'd probably bitch out knowing what can happen to me. I was 17 when this happened. I was in my room, laying in bed and watching some movie. My entertainment center was directly across from my bed. My desk was set up against the wall at the foot of my bed, with a 4-foot gap between my TV and desk. I'm watching a movie, feeling a little sleepy, when something happens in the corner of my eye. I look over to my desk and I see this little boy with black hair kinda crouched behind my desk, looking over at me. I'm frozen to the spot, staring at this kid. I look away for a split second and when I look back, he was gone. It wasn't utterly terrifying in the horror sense, but I found it so unsettling and creepy and it just caught me so off guard. It still sends a chill down my spine when I think about it. My mother was not the best of people. She was 19 when she had me, and was completely unprepared to be a parent. She would lock me in my room for hours on end, so that she wouldn't have to pay attention to me, often forgot to feed me, because I would get spanked or slapped if I made noise to remind her that I was hungry, and I was generally a miserable child. She also tried to drown me in the ocean as an infant. She passed away in a car accident when I was almost 11 years old, and the next year, my dad moved my whole family to a different state. I was relieved, as I had been relentlessly bullied for my entire school career up to this point. I saw this as my chance to start over, change my personality and hopefully have friends. I did make friends, and at a sleepover one night, one of the girls pulled out an Ouija board, and we started to play. We had no less than 4 or 5 girls with their hands on the planchette, and another was writing down the letters as they were spelled out. I had been playing with the planchette, but I got up to get a glass of water. When I came back, I took over the writing duties. This means that during this time, my hands were nowhere near the planchette. The board was on the floor, and I was sitting on the bed. One of the girls said, "Are there spirits present that have a message for one of us?" The planchette started moving rapidly, back, forth, up, down, and I was writing down letters as quickly as possible. The message? Claudia says, "Hi Magoo." Claudia was my mother's first name. Magoo was her nickname for me as a child, because I could never find the things she asked me to find. There is no possible way that any of those girls knew either of these things. Those girls swore that my face turned white when I reread the message. All I really remember was throwing down the notepad and pen, and running back home, thankfully, only 2 blocks, at midnight in my nightgown, with the other girls running after me. They managed to convince me to come back to the party. We burned the Ouija board in the outdoor barbecue pit that night. In 2006 I had a dream about my grandma who had Alzheimer's. In my dream I was talking to her and saying goodbye. The next morning I told my mother that I thought we should go see Grandma. My mother said Grandma will be fine. I was 17 so I drove myself to her care home, and when I walked into the room her face lit up with the biggest smile. I didn't stay long, but I told her that I loved her and then left. The next day she passed away. I have had 3 different experiences with sleep paralysis where a shadow man is pulling my soul from my body. I have used a spirit board, basically a OG board but for good spirits. The spirit board I have used with my girlfriend, and we were able to contact many spirits and ask questions. We asked one spirit who was her cousin a series of questions about the future to which so far have come true. Including I was single at the time, future husband, and how I would know, to which they replied Christmas. Well, that Christmas, guess who invited me home for Christmas? My new boyfriend, who is now about to be my husband. I also asked when I would be working full-time on my own project for work, and the spirit said 3 to 4 years. Well, that was 3 years ago this summer, and guess who has their own project starting? I have lots of dreams about other realms, doors that lead to places, the planets, being on spaceships and being shown things that the average person doesn't know. One time I had a dream I was riding my bike up a cliffside and I looked down into the ocean shore, and an army of Native Americans were walking out of the water with their arms above their heads holding dolphins. That dream feels very significant, and I have a feeling it really does mean something's coming. In 2008, I was staying over at my grandparents' house for the summer break. The place was 40 km from Chennai in a nice town. People were nice, no history of crime or violence, very religious and spiritual town, everyone knew everyone, kind of nice. The last night before I left for home, we watched a documentary on the beginning of life, and it was nice, slept by 11 p.m. At 11:34 p.m., I heard crows cawing. Weird, I thought. At exact same time, I saw a crow looking at me inside the house, and then it flew towards the idols of our gods. Hindu religion has multiple gods. My grandparents are strict followers and very particular about that room. I saw that, woke up and went there, nothing, so I came back and slept. Still 11:34 p.m. Weird, I thought. Out of nowhere, I heard the most horrific scream/shriek, filled with pain and disgust and hate and anger. Suddenly I have an OBE and see myself outside the house, and I see a tall dark hooded figure, floating towards our house, and every time it comes closer, I can hear the dragging of chains, and then I see that thing coming up the stairs towards my room, and I open my eyes, it's still ducking. 11:34 p.m. I sort of have this dreaded feeling that this demon or this tall hooded creature is standing right behind me at the entrance of the room. I try waking my mom up, she is drooling and in deep sleep, my brother, him too, we all were sleeping in the same room. I now have no choice but to face that thing, so I get up and just look outside the door, and there it is. Tall, approx 7 to 8 feet, hooded, and I can't make out the features of its face, but I stared into its eyes, they were hollow. It felt like forever but was just few seconds. That thing just turned into dust and just hit me. When it hit me, I couldn't breathe, my windpipe swole up and I started wheezing. I opened my eyes up again, the lights turn on, my grandfather, granny, mom and brother all are staring at me, and grandfather just injects me with something and I am breathing normally again. I pass out. Next day we go to doctor, he tells me I almost died, my windpipe still has swelling and they couldn't find any reason behind it. After some time, I started developing these water boils all over my body. Doctors were not able to find out exactly what it was, they were painful, it did hurt a lot, but I just took the pain. I told my mom, grandparents, they didn't react much to it. After that day, I have seen that thing couple of times more. But the thing that changed most I feel is, my personality. I somehow became more confident, felt more stronger, and fearless. To this day, I have no idea what it was, a demon, a ghost? I don't know. About a decade ago, when I was still in high school, I always used to bike to school in the early hours of the morning. My road led me through these beautiful forested areas, past meadows for livestock and through tranquil country roads. I loved biking there before the sun came up in the winter. The road is split in places. There's one lane for bikes, a small ditch and a larger lane for forest rangers to drive their cars along. One time I was riding along the bike lane when suddenly, on the car lane, I saw a light. About head level. Very bright, but not blinding. It was slightly behind me and moving at a steady pace along with me. I wasn't scared, more like unsettled due to how suddenly it had appeared and how it was slowly moving my way. I stepped it up and got out of there. Didn't look back. Rode that road for years, never saw it again. Not long ago I even hiked there in the middle of the night hoping to see it again. I figured maybe my returning to the area after so long would trigger it to happen again. Maybe it would recognize me, or my intent to see it again. But no luck. It doesn't have to be supernatural. Could have been ball lightning. Though even if it was, I feel privileged to have witnessed it. Ball lightning or wisp, it was a unique experience. One I really wish I could experience again. When I was a little kid, my family moved to the hills of West Virginia and lived in a small house that was built in the 1920s. I hated this house, specifically my room. How my room was set up was that my bed was in a corner and my closet was directly across from my bed. Facing the closet, to the right, was a doorway with no door leading into a playroom. The door to leave my room was to the left of my closet on the wall that was bed was on. Every night, I sat there staring at my closet door. My dog, who is a bigger husky, Shepherd Mutt, would lay at the door whining to get out of my room, as I made her stay with me, which she never did in any other room, even when she needed to go outside. My fearless dog hating being in my room. After a while, the fear didn't get any better. I would beg my parents to let me stay at my grandparents' house, which was next door, or for my dad to stay in my room with me until I fell asleep. I had never had trouble going to sleep on my own, so my parents thought this was just some way to get attention or something. Well, one night, all of this fear and everything else came to a head. I was lying in my bed, pillows stacked up so I wouldn't have to see my closet door, hiding under the covers. I heard my dog yelp. This being odd, I peeked out of the covers and saw nothing. As soon as I laid back down, I heard the handle fall off of my old closet door. The handle falling off wasn't something new, as it was only a front knob and a rod and was found on the floor quite frequently. No one thought a thing of it and would just pick it up and place it back in the hole. When I heard the knob fall, I terrifyingly looked over, and no one nor I had ever actually seen it fall before. Since the door was old, the knob kept the mechanism latched so the door wouldn't open. Since the knob was out, the door creaked open like in a horror movie. At this point I was so scared I couldn't move or scream or do anything. My dog at this point of whining very loud, but not loud enough for my parents in their room to hear. Then she stopped. Just stopped. I looked at the open closet door and saw a small, frail boy with a very large head. All of him was black except for where his eyes should be. He slowly turned and looked at me, and I didn't feel fear, I felt devastation. I felt the most extreme anger and sadness and intense emotions I have ever felt. It wasn't natural. After what seemed like forever, I bolted out of my room, sobbing, and ran to my parents. My parents never let me sleep with them, so my father took me back to bed and waited until I fell asleep. From then on, I would throw actual fits if I wasn't allowed to stay the night at my grandparents'. On nights I had to stay home, this same experience would happen every single night. I wouldn't sleep if I stayed at my house, so my parents gave in and let me stay with my grandparents most nights. It got to the point where my mom was telling my godmother what was happening, and she offered to bless the room as she was a devout Catholic. After this, things got better for about a week and then all collapsed into the same horror show every night. My parents aren't very religious, but eventually decided to test it out for themselves. My mother stayed in my room one night and decided that we needed to move the next day. I've never seen that little boy again, but the thought of it brings me to tears. I don't know what it was. I believe in the supernatural. It's kind of hard for me not to. I wasn't the only one to experience this. My old house was tested for any kind of leaks or slow poisoning and was clear. After selling it, we found out that the people that lived there refused to use that room, which I found interesting because they never knew what had happened. I was spending the night at my girlfriend's, future ex-wife, parents' house over the holidays. We were in our 20s at the time, so they didn't care about us sleeping together in the same room. They had recently bought furniture for the bedroom we were sleeping in. It had been her sister's room, but she had committed suicide about a year earlier, so they had decided to redo it. The furniture was all expensive antiques and had been a set, bed, chair, blanket chest and a very large armoire with a full-length mirror on the center door, 3 doors on it. The first night there, I bolt up wide awake in the middle of the night, the hair standing up on my neck. As my eyes adjust, I swear I can see a white haze in the chair to my left. As I'm staring, watching, I see the haze rise up, and now I'm looking at an old woman, in a long nightgown, literally with an old nightcap on her head and holding a candle in an old-style candle holder, the kind with a plate on the bottom and a ring to hold it. She slowly crosses the room right at the foot of the bed and disappears into the mirror on the armoire on the right. Needless to say, I never slept in that room again. I was about 12 or 13 in the bathroom of my local AMC movie theater. It was during the middle of the movie, so I was rushing to get back to my seat so I didn't miss too much. I was alone in the 4-stall bathroom and the handicap stall. The 3 stalls next to me were completely empty. The socially anxious part of me always checked before selecting a stall. There was a little sink inside of the handicap stall without a mirror. So after doing my business and quickly washing my hands, I turned around and standing there, as plain as day, was a little girl, aged 6 or so. She was glaring at me with so much hate that I was actually taken aback. She stood there, completely still, just glaring. She wasn't breathing either. It was almost like she was a hologram, that's how still she was. My first instinct was to tell her off, since I used to babysit kids her age and had little patience for that kind of behavior. But something about the whole situation felt off. I had only been washing my hands for a few seconds, so I knew there was no way she could have sprinted across the entire room, crawled under my stall, and stood behind me in that time frame, let alone done so without me hearing it. The sink wasn't that loud, and the bathroom was tiled, you couldn't even tiptoe across it without making noise. And as I mentioned, all of the stalls were empty when I entered, and no one entered the room in the time I was in there. I would have heard it. Every part of me was telling me to say nothing and get the hell out of there. It almost felt like everyone was holding their breath, even though she and I were the only ones there. You know that tense feeling in the air when everybody's dreading something that's about to happen? That's the only way I can describe it. Anyway, all I ended up doing was let out a surprised "oh" before speed walking back to my seat. I was so freaked out that I decided I would wait outside for her to see if she would come out of the only exit after the movie ended. That way, if I saw her, I could tell myself she was just a bored kid playing a stupid prank. But she never came out. My siblings didn't see her in the bathroom either. I refused to go back in. I told my mother afterwards, but she thought I was crazy. To be fair, it sounded crazy to me too. So yeah. I didn't even believe in ghosts at that age, but after that bizarre experience, I wasn't so sure. I was working overnight at a small 24-pint psych ward in a medium-sized hospital built in the 1950s. Everyone always says the floor was haunted, but I'd been working there for about 10 years, and never had a paranormal encounter there myself. Anyway, it's about 1 a.m., and a tech that was stationed outside the door of a sleeping PT's room, doing a direct line of sight observation, comes to the door of the nurse's station with another tech in tow. They both say they just saw a shadow person walk out of room 610, down the hall, and walk into the assistant director's office. I look at my monitor tech. Her job is to watch the panel of cameras on the unit. She nods. Yay, I saw it too, on the camera. Now, I'm super jelly, everyone's always talking about the shit they see, and I've never seen anything. I decided to walk down there and peek in the window in the door, see what I can see. Well, I immediately regretted it. Let me explain, I've been down that hall 10,000 times, probably more. But something is decidedly off. Yay, it gets cold, colder than it has ever been, not even winter, but it is more than that. Each step is harder to take than the last. I can feel something oppressive, something heavy. I'm starting to get tightness in my chest. I feel hate, the feeling of something hating, pure undiluted hate. It wanted me to know that it isn't human, it never has been human, and it hates all humans. I'm starting to consider turning around. I look back, and the entire crew is standing at the nurse's station peeking their heads around the door watching me. Can't chicken out in front of that many people. I keep walking. I get about 5 feet away from the door, and I have feelings of impending doom. I'm almost sure I'm going to die right then and there. I can't will myself any closer to that door. About that time the blinds and the window and the door open all by themselves. I see a face, an outline, it's got a cone-shaped head, like someone in a hooded robe maybe, and a mouth frozen in an eternal scream, and giant holes where eyes should have been. I turn around and start running, back towards the nurse's station, back toward other people. I never looked back. When I get there, they say I was white as a sheet, shaky, mumbling, and had cold sweat beads. The monitor tech shows me the footage. Some kind of misty black fog chased me about 150 down the hall and dissipated around room 610, and everyone saw it. The administration of the hospital tell me I can't have a copy of the footage, says it can't have the hospital getting a bad reputation, especially the psych ward. Fine, I'll record the footage on my phone next time I work. Nope, they deleted it. But I do have about 7 good witnesses who saw it all. My husband and I were chased/followed by 2 skinwalkers about 8 or 9 months ago. We were in the Sandwash/Mesa off-roading at the time. My husband saw something up ahead, so we slowed down a bit thinking it may have been an animal because he mentioned that it was fast as duck. I thought he was screwing with me, but when we passed that trail there were 2 girls standing there, staring at us. As we drove past, I wondered why they were there all alone. It just didn't sit right with me, so I turned to my husband to say something, and he was wearing this look of absolute terror. He yelled, "Oh God, they're gaining on us," while looking into the mirrors. I don't think I really understood what he meant. Everything kinda went slow motion. Why? I saw how scared he was, looked in my mirror, saw nothing, then twisted to look out the rear window. And there they were, not even 50 feet from us and gaining. My husband stomped on the gas, and soon after, the dust that had been kicked up made it impossible to see anything. We drove around for about an hour, trying to really figure out what we had just seen. We went home, got ready for bed, and that should have been it. Except neither of us could sleep, so we watched a little TV. I must have ended up dozing off because the next thing I remember, I heard something, opened my eyes and saw 2 relatively small shadows at our sliding back door. I thought it had been a nightmare, so I didn't mention anything until my lunch break the next day, and my husband responded it wasn't a dream. I saw them too. For a few months after, weird things started happening around our house. Finding small bones outside, the smoke alarm in our bedroom going off for no reason, while the smoke alarm in the hallway was fine. Batteries were changed, and it still happened, cupboards being opened, a saucer laying in the middle of the kitchen floor, that would have surely broken if pushed off the counter, weird dreams, my husband hearing me call his name when I didn't, or vice versa. Not many of those things can be related to skinwalker activity, so it left me a bit baffled. Still hear things from time to time from other rooms, but nothing like it had been. Black Stickman phenomenon. I had some experiences as a child that I would consider paranormal. After my teenage years I never really opened up about them to people, because of how crazy it sounds. It wasn't until several years ago that I started researching on the internet and found I wasn't alone in seeing these strange creatures. I know it might sound silly to some, but this is what I experienced. When I was growing up I had a best friend who lived down the street. We lived in a quiet, small town where her dad was always working. I would walk to her house every day after school and we would often take walks, walk to the liquor store to buy candy etc. I would often see a stickman following us, peeking out from behind her couch etc. He was all black and changed sizes. Sometimes the size of a small cat, other times taller than a normal size man. I felt very scared of him and felt he was mischievous at best, perhaps evil. I finally got the courage up to tell my best friend and she admitted to seeing him too. I always got the feeling he was the same one every time, not different stickmen. One time he appeared in the shape of a stick figure horse, like a bad child's drawing. I always believed him to be somehow following me and watching me. Until, when my best friend passed away suddenly our senior year of high school. She had a genetic heart condition that nobody, including herself, had known about. I've never seen what we called Stickman ever since. I believe now perhaps he was some form of Grim Reaper awaiting his time to take my friend. I don't know if that's really the case, but it seems odd the sightings of him disappeared after she passed. When I was in middle school, I kept my bedroom door open one night. That night my father was out drinking or something. I say something, as he was cheating on my mother at this time, so who's to say, he didn't come back by the time I went to bed. So when I heard the front door slam shut in the middle of the night, I thought, Dad's home. Then I went back to sleep as I heard him walk up the stairs to the living room. The house I lived in, for context, had stairs right as you entered through the front door or garage door, up to the living room and down to the basement. Then more stairs when you walked up, leading to the bedrooms on the 3rd floor that were over the garage. Never heard him walk up to my parents' bedroom that was in view from my bedroom door. I felt something was watching me. I woke up slowly to see what I presumed was my father in the doorway. I squinted at him because he plays jokes like this, trying to scare me and my sisters. When I got a good look at the man in the doorway, I couldn't see any features. I went to wipe my eyes and get a better look at him. I stared at the man and 2 white eyes stared back. I realized this wasn't my father. I didn't scream, or jump back in fear. Instead, I did what any sensible person would do. Cover my face and hide in my sheets. I heard the man walk over to my bed after I hid. I could feel him still staring at me. He was close enough I could hear him breathing. I just cried, hoping it was all a dream, or a prank my dad was playing on me. I eventually cried myself to sleep. I woke up that morning scared out of my mind, to find my father sleeping on the couch. I didn't tell anyone about what happened at the time. I didn't have the best relationship with my father, so I never approached him about it either when he woke up. However, I asked my mom when dad got home and she didn't know, as he never came to bed. I slept with my door closed from then on. When I would sleep on a couch or a room with no doors from that night onward, I always felt someone was watching me from the corner of the room. But as I got older, it slowly stopped happening. He now seems to come back when I drive at night. Sometimes I think I see him in my back seat or on the sidewalk. So I think whatever this is, it's still attached to me. But I have never seen him as clearly as I saw him that night he stood in my bedroom doorway. Don't mean to leave it like that. But nothing else has happened, nor has he shown himself the past 4 months. So it's good for the time being. A girl I knew for a few years and was very good friends with passed away in a car accident. A few days later I have a dream that she's standing in the center of the road and I'm barreling towards her. I run into her, but then she appears in the seat beside me. She forces my head toward her abdomen. Where her stomach would be, there's a large mouth. The teeth are made of broken glass and sharp metal. She keeps saying, "Shh, shh." I wake up from the dream and I'm still hearing, "Shh." I look at the foot of my bed and she's standing in my room. She walks through my door and into the hallway. I follow her. She walks down the hallway and vanishes through the front door of the house. I didn't realize at the time, but my dad was on the couch. He asked me if I was okay and asked if the flickering lights are what woke me up. He didn't see her and I never noticed the lights flickering. My family has very old cottage in mountains, where I like to spend time every summer. Last summer something really scary happened. Evening, fast midnight, I'm downstairs in my room and I'm reading book. My grandparents are upstairs. They are, probably, sleeping. How I said, this cottage is very old and has thin walls, so sometimes you can hear what you really don't want to hear. For example, my grandparents wake up often through the night because they need to go pee, but when they go to the bathroom, whole cottage shakes. Especially when they are on stairs, everyone else hears their steps. So I'm in my bed and reading my book when I suddenly hear some weird noise upstairs, near the staircase. First one short shaking and then steps. But which steps? It sounds like kids' steps, without shoes. And what is the most scary, they stop in the middle of the staircase and then nothing. Nothing more. Well, I'm so scared at that moment, that I'm hiding under the blanket and trying to fall asleep very fast because I'm downstairs totally alone. But what was the second, most scariest thing? Next morning my grandparents asked me what I was doing at midnight on the staircase, that they both woke up because heard some steps but saw nobody. Well, it's not first weird thing I've witnessed there, so I am starting to believe that we have very scary cottage. If you hear stories about Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh, Scotland being haunted, I advise you to believe them. I was visiting the city with my boyfriend. We were taking one of the haunted walk tours. Our guide was excellent. She was dressed all in black, very gothic, and was clearly a talented actress. Being 6 foot, and 5'10", we towered over the 2 other couples and the 2 hen parties that were on the tour with us. Out of respect for them, we stood in the back of the group. When we arrived at the Covenanters prison, worth a Google search, I thought our tour guide was laying it on wonderfully thick. She seemed genuinely concerned for our safety. She discussed how people get pushed, pulled, scratch, extension. She told us that there was no shame in wanting to leave. If we got scared, she would lead us out. We were having a great time. And then something yanked on the back of my hair. My boyfriend saw me jerk back and we both spun around. But we were at the back of the group. It was impressively strong and it scared the crap out of me. We continued into a crypt in the Covenanters prison. Again, we stood at the back of the pack, but this time I was a little less happy about it. While our guide talked, I felt another tug on my hair. This one was much weaker than the last, so I could have just caught my hair on my jacket or purse. I was pretty freaked out. Some of the girls from one of the hen parties were pretty impaired. One girl was standing in front of us. I remember thinking she was very brave to wear white pants and a light yellow t-shirt to the muddy cemetery on a rainy day. She started jerking her right knee forward at an odd angle. After a few times, she turns around and yells, "Stop ducking, kicking me." Shit. My boyfriend and I look at each other and at the other couple standing beside and slightly in front of us. None of us were anywhere near her. Now, this girl was pretty intoxicated, So while I was already freaked out, I was prepared to disregard her, until the last kick. I was watching her leg and clear as day, she bent her knee forward and gasped and I saw a muddy footprint appear on the back of her pants. They were bright white and we all confirmed after the fact, it was a footprint, we could distinguish toes. At this point, I grabbed onto my boyfriend for dear life and held on until the guide was done talking. As soon as she was done, the other couple joined us in running out of that crypt. We all chatted with our tour guide and a couple of her co-workers for a while. She told us that our experience is pretty standard there. She wasn't acting when she warned us. I'm a lover of horror/supernatural/creepy things. I spent a lot of my teens and childhood ghost hunting with my friends in random graveyards, run-down neighborhoods, abandoned factories, etc. That being said, we never really encountered anything other than psychosomatic ghosts that our overactive imagination created. Despite loving horror, I didn't really believe that any sort of corporeal ghosts were real. When I was 15 I traveled to Europe with my family. We stayed in Ettel, Germany in a small inn for a few nights. My parents had a double on the second floor, my sisters had the double bedroom next to theirs, and I was lucky enough to have a single room all to myself at the far end of the hall. When we went to check into our rooms, as soon as I entered the hallway our rooms were in, I remember almost feeling as though I walked into a wall of bad energy? I just felt so unnerved and uneasy in that hallway, but I passed it off as overactive imagination. I slept the first night without any issues other than waking up a few times. The next morning at breakfast, one of my sisters mentioned feeling really uncomfortable in the hallway, almost as if the air was crushing. It unnerved me even more that I wasn't the only one who felt weirded out, plus she was an adult at the time, so it further cemented in my head that that wing of the hotel was odd. Later that night, I'm sleeping peacefully, when at about 2 a.m., I'm woken by something ripping the covers off of me, and being jerked about 2 feet towards the end of the bed by my ankle. At first I thought someone had broken into my room, because when I turned towards what had grabbed me, a huge looming black shape was visible in the darkness, like a man was in my room. I frantically flipped the light on, only to have there be nothing there. The window was locked from the inside, there was no one in the closet, or the bathroom, and my room was also still locked from the inside. I stayed up the rest of the night scared shitless, playing Cooking Mama on my DS. Next morning, we're at breakfast and my sister mentions that she was up half the night because she thought she saw a person silhouetted against the wall of the room, but when she turned on the light there was no one there. It was just a bizarre and creepy experience. We checked out that day, so I didn't get to experience anything after that, but it still freaks me out to this day.